Hi guys, Tankski here. Welcome to this video tutorial for Photoshop. Practically today I'm going to be teaching you how to create this image here. I'm going to actually split the tutorial up into three parts to teach you fundamentals of certain aspects of Photoshop and then bring it all together in one to create this image. So I'll stop blabbering on and get started. So first of all, we're going to want to create a new image. So File New, or as the shortcut says, Control N or Command N if you're on Mac. Width, I'll say 512, and height will be 256. Resolution you can leave at 72, but I've seen in some places, and I've been told by a few people, that 300 is probably a better idea, as it gives a bit more sharpness to images if you plan to print them out or such, which I highly doubt you're going to do if you're following this tutorial. You can leave the rest color mode, RGB color, 8 bits. You don't want 16 or 32 floating point because we're not dealing with high dynamic range today. Background content's white. Well, you can have background color transparent. Might as well just keep it white for now. First off, we're going to want to change the color, so set foreground color, and we're going to use the RGB. We're going to use RGB values, so I'm going to type in 127, 127, 127 in all three channels, or if you're a hexadecimal guy, you'll want to type in 7F, 7F, 7F. Now you've changed the colour, what you can do is press Alt and Backspace to fill the entire background of, well, this practically middle grey. So now you've set up the background, you can double click the layer, call it BG, just to identify it as the base background. So now we're going to create some text. You can use any font we like. I was using Galgabold for the original image, but I'm going to use a font called Disco Deck, just because I feel like I can. Change the colour to black. And type in some text. So I'm actually going to type in no. Test. No, that's a bit too conspicuous and conformist and unoriginal. Set. That'll do. First of all, we're going to align it to the center. So you're going to press while selecting this layer, the text layer, press Control A, and while you're in the Move tool, you're going to want to go up to this alignment bar at the top and just click the two middle ones so it aligns to the middle. Then press Control T to bring up the transform interface. Hold Shift and Alt to change the size of the text until you feel it's appropriate. So now you've got the text, what we're going to do is add a chromish sort of effect, as you can see here, and we're also going to add a slight ambient occlusion to it. I would probably be the technical term for it. Drop shadow, probably better to know it by. So double click the layer to bring up the layer style, or if you're someone who favours the long way of doing it, you can click this button here and go gradient overlay. So now you've got to this part, you can click this gradient. Don't worry, I've deleted all my other gradients for the purpose of this tutorial, so it's called Copper. It should be default with most Photoshop installations. Just click it, then click off, and then click again on the gradient selection thing to bring up the gradient editor. So what we're going to do, instead of making this copper, we're going to want to call it make it chrome or thereabouts. So you're just going to change these color stops, double click them, and then just drag the color stop circle all the way over to the side, so it gives it a monochrome color and it looks a bit more chromy. Now you've done that, you can type in the name field, Chrome, click New, and that will then create your Chrome variant, which at this point you press OK. Reason for creating this gradient is because you'll be using it in the stroke. So with the stroke, you tick the box obviously, set the size to 1. You can set it to any other size because I'm actually trying to promote originality here. Position outside, blend mode, normal, opacity, 100%. Fill type, gradient. Angle, 90 degrees, so it's vertical. Gradient, we're going to use your Chrome gradient that we've just made. It might not look like you've done nothing, and to be honest, that's probably you're pretty much right in saying that. So you're going to want to tick reverse, which then sort of contrasts all of the colours together and sort of gives it a weird effect that I cannot be bothered to describe at this moment in time. Then you want to add this drop shadow effect. You can use drop shadow obviously, and I'm not going to go into the depths of covering how to use drop shadow because really Photoshop should be self-intuitive. But using the outer glow, first of all you're going to want to change the blend mode to normal. And you'll probably wonder why you're doing this, and you'll actually see in a few seconds time. You're going to want to change the color from the outer glow from this off-white beigey sort of cream color to black. And the reason being we've changed the blend mode is because if it was at screen actually filters out black. So it's sort of like a chroma key for black. Multiplies the opposite of screen in Photoshop. So we're going to want it at the blend mode to normal. Set the size to 15, 20, 500, 10. I'm going to go with 10. I think that sounds a lot more reasonable than 500. And it does look a bit harsh, so I'm going to change the opacity from 75 to 40. Nah, 35. Everything else, and the contours and everything else, you can keep the same unless you're really heading for the best quality, etc, etc. But I'm not going to go into that because I'm teaching you fundamentals. Now you've got the text sorted, that's one fundamental part to it, creating the Chrome text. So we can just simply put it in its own group because we're going to end up adding stuff to it. Pressing Ctrl G, or if you're a fan of doing it the long way without shortcuts, you can just click group from layers, call it text. If you are colour OCD-ish, you can change the colour, so I will, just for the sake of doing so. Violet. And this is what it is. It's in a group because we're going to come back to this group later on. You can do extra stuff to it, and I actually have done it in my original example, but I'll probably cover that at a later point. Whoops, didn't mean to create that guide. So now we've created that, we can now focus on the floor, which is this part here. So what we're going to do is, selecting the BG layer, press Ctrl Shift N to bring up the new layer, or you can layer, new layer, Ctrl Shift N, it says. Name, BG Grad P1, yay for abbreviations, and don't give it any colour. Press OK. In this part, just get the rectangular marquee tool, drag a rectangle or box, depending on if you're square or rectangle, or you can use an elliptical shape or whatever. It's up to you for preference. But pressing D to default the color palette. Once you've got your selection, hold down Alt and backspace again to fill the area. Don't deselect it like I have just done. So then you want to create another layer, so it'll be BG Grad Part 2. Sorry, BG Grad P2. Control Shift I to invert the selection. X to change the color palette. Alt backspace to fill in that area. So now we've got the two parts of our background. These parts you can then add layer styles to, as you did here to create a gradient. So double click it, gradient overlay. Then in here you're going to want to change the colours. So I'm going to go with the dark one. I'm going to go for a RGB of 1D, 1D, 1D. All 35, 35, 35. And for the black colour stop and the white colour stop, I'll go with 1B, 1B, 1B. Whoops, forgot B. Yeah, that'll. Will it? No. Sextuple 1. So now you've got that part, you're going to want to press enter just to sort of close all the dialogue. So you can copy this layer style by holding Alt and dragging the FX icon onto the layer above it, BG Grad P2. Double click the gradient overlay text to bring up the actual gradient overlay. Tick the reverse box, so now it looks like it's one seamless sort of gradient. Then we're going to go in here and lighten things up a bit. So change the RGB values from 35 to 40, 40, 40. And for the left colour stop and for the right colour stop, we're going to change it to 20, 20, 20. Or hexadecimal 141414. Now that's done, you've got the sort of background basics. You can click these arrows here to just collapse the layer style stack. It doesn't actually collapse it, as in you can't edit anything, it just makes it easier and more compact. So now you've got these two done, you're going to want to create this, which is the floor plane grid. So we're going to create a new document, so Control N, width 512, height 512, resolution 72, blah 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 blah. Okay. Now this is where I've just been a complete and utter idiot and forgot to change the values of the grid, because we're going to actually have to change the image size. So Control Alt I, or Command Option I think it is on Mac, change it to 15 by 15. By the way, sorry for any Mac users out there that are getting a bit annoyed at me because I'm not covering Mac commands. I'm not a regular Mac user, so I'll just, yeah, I'm gonna leave you to interpret it. Control Shift N. Just press enter. You don't need to change anything. You can just double click the background layer, press enter to make it a layer in itself, delete it. Then what you're gonna do is drag a pixel wide column all the way down the center of the image, Alt backspace with white selected, and do it horizontally as well. So now you've got a sort of crosshair in the middle of your screen. By the way, I'm zooming in and out by holding Alt GR and then pressing the minus or plus, respective of zooming out or in. Now what we're going to do is click Edit, define pattern. We're going to call it ground plane pattern. And press OK. Now that's done. We've got a ground plane pattern done, and we can actually just fill the entire thing with black and change the size back to 512 by 512. Now we're going to add a pattern to this black vast space of nothingness and doom, and add a pattern overlay to it from in the layer styles menu, and then just go to this grid, and then you'll come up with, well, yeah, this. And problem is that if you were to try copy it over, you'd get a black thing, because it'd have to copy over the layer style as well, and that doesn't transform alongside the transformations that you're going to do to it. So what you're going to have to do is rasterize it. So you just create a new layer, Control Shift N. I'm going to start ignoring telling shortcuts from now on, so I expect you guys to know them now. Can select both of the layers by holding Control, then go into Control E, or layer, merge layers. Now that's rasterized it, you can copy it over, and after selecting the BG Grad Part 2, you can paste it in, and there you go. You've got your ground plane. You're going to change the blend modes to screen, and change the opacity to, I don't know, 133 does 7 doesn't work, I'll just have to go with 13. Now we're going to move it down, but first of all we're going to sort of crunch it together. And just play with it until you get however you want it. So once you've sort of crumpled it, you're going to want to add some perspective to it. So you're going to want to, after pressing enter, you're going to want to press Control T again, or you can do it in one go if you are a lunatic, and hold Control Alt Shift and drag the bottom right hand corner outwards, so it then begins to add perspective to it. This then is your ground plane, and it's perfectly fine as it is, but I prefer to give it sort of a fall off. So we're going to press this button down here to create a layer mask, go to the gradient tool, and we're going to change the gradient colour to black. Or you could just use the foregrounds to transparent colour and make sure it's black. But anywho, you then want to just drag gradients and give it a sort of fall off here. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. You can view this sort of layer mask by alt-clicking the thumbnail. Now you've done that, you're sort of halfway there. But in the example BSD I've got here, I've also got a ground glow, sort of just to emphasize the text. So what we're going to do is create a new layer and bring out the brush tool, make sure it's color white, and also make sure it's 100% softness. Whoops. Just click anywhere, press Control T to create a transform, bring up the transform tools, and just play around with it until you get sort of what you want. Set the blending mode to overlay, and Bob's your uncle, it's sort of done. You can add the same layer mask even to this glow by alt dragging it from the layer below onto it. Now you've got this. You're gonna in this layer there example. We've also got a blue glow to give some colour to the text and the bottom. What we're gonna do now is, first of all though, is create a group out of the images layers. So you select them all. Layer, new, group from layers. BG plain. Color blue. Now in the text group, we're going to create. In fact, we're not going to create a new layer. We're going to duplicate this one. Drag it on top of here. Delete the layer mask by right-clicking over it and selecting delete. So make the ground glow smaller and actually make the fill percentage 0. Now you want to go to color overlay, set it to overlay itself, and then just find a color. So I'm going to go with 48, 124, 234, 92. Yep, random color. And then we're just going to play around with the color itself, so color opacity itself. So 40. You can change the size of it again if you want. And practically that's that. You can also change the location of the text by just holding shift and down or up arrows, etc. You're going to want, as I've got OCD and probably most of you guys are doing one way or another, I'm going to change the colour to back to violet so it conforms with the grouping. Now you've got those two, you've now got the ground and the text. So now you've got both. And the final thing in this tutorial, fundamental, is, well, the flares, which frankly are easy to do. There are a number of ways of doing it, and to be honest, you're going to, I'm just going to show you one way of doing it, but you can use so many different ways. If you've got optical flares from Video Copilot and After Effects, you can use that. If you've got null light effects for Photoshop, you can use that, but I'm going to actually just show you how to create one from scratch. So, practically, create a new layer, bring the brush tool out, doesn't matter what size as long as it's soft. Make sure the foreground colour is white, and just create a dot on a new layer somewhere. Change its size by pressing Ctrl T and fiddling about. I'm just going to centre it. So now you've got a centred blodge. Now this blodge is centred, you're going to press Ctrl J to duplicate the layer. And then, while holding down Alt and Shift, and not buggering up the anchor point, you're going to sort of create starburst streak sort of effect. Now you've done that, you can just select all three layers, Control A, merge, Control A, copy, Control selecting the text group, Control V, paste, so it pastes it on top of it. So now you've got this lens flare. You want to change the blending mode to color dodge and scale it, Control T to scale it down. And I'm going to place one on the corner there, Control J to duplicate, and I'm going to place one on the corner there and rotate it. Now, just as we've got everything else in groups, you can just go new group from layers, flares, color, green, and you can play around with these flares however or whenever or whatever you want. You can go a bit further with this metal effect, and you can make it look like brushed aluminium by simply going onto the text layer. Whoops. Text. Going below the color layer, but actually above the text layer. Just create a new layer. Yeah, do that. Fill it with black. Filter, noise, add noise. I'm just going to use uniform monochromatic 40%. Filter, blur, motion blur. Now, I'm going to use 25 pixels as my distance, but angle can be whatever you want. Control click the text layer while still selecting the noise layer. Press the layer mask button, and that'll limit the layer mask to your selection. Then screen, and you can just play around with the opacity. So you've set it to 50%. You've got the sort of brushed aluminium effect on it as well. But hopefully this taught you the basics of how to sort of get a chrome-ish effect, how to create a pattern, and then use transform tool to add perspective to it to create a sort of ground plane, and how to create lens flares and your own gradients. But anyway, if you have any ideas for other tutorials, just drop a comment. I'm thinking about creating a few more, so hopefully these will become successful for those who want to watch them. And if you don't want to watch them, well, don't watch them. But I hope you enjoy and learn from this tutorial, and I also hope you can be original instead of copying this entire thing entirely because it's there, etc., etc. I'll be uploading the gradient source files just in case you can't you want to use the gradient I used, even though I'm really pretty sure that you shouldn't really have problems replicating it. But thanks for watching.